Antibiotics, we're wonderful pills, but don't ever think we'll cure all of your ills. So every time you feel a bit under the weather, don't always think that we can make you better. Take us for the wrong thing, that's dangerous to do. When you really need us, we can stop working for you. So please don't end up paying the price. Always take your doctor's advice.
Yep, yet another topic I'm revisiting 3 years after I originally covered it. I've already covered 8 disturbing British PSAs in the past. Could I have stopped there? Of course not. The UK really loves trying to freak its people out just to get a point across. I didn't even really scratch the surface with the last list, and there will honestly be many more after this one. But in the meantime, here are 8 more disturbing British PSAs.
A masterpiece in tapestry by John Coburn. Rare pleasure. A rare pleasure. The same kind of pleasure afforded by the deluxe filter cigarettes of Messrs. Lambert and Butler. Rare pleasure, when cost is no consideration.
Smoking remains one of the most pressing public health concerns in the UK. Despite decades of awareness campaigns, it continues to exert a significant toll on both individuals and society. Smoking doesn't merely harm the smoker, it casts a long shadow over families, communities, and healthcare systems. The effects of smoking on health are profound and multifaceted. Tobacco smoke contains a cocktail of toxic substances, many of which are directly linked to diseases such as lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and heart disease. These illnesses can develop insidiously, often manifesting years after the habit begins. Even those who manage to avoid the more severe outcomes may experience reduced lung function, impaired circulation, or persistent respiratory problems. It's a grim legacy for what often starts as a youthful experiment. The dangers extend beyond the smoker. Secondhand smoke poses a considerable risk to bystanders, especially children. Long-term exposure can lead to asthma, respiratory infections, and other serious conditions in non-smokers. Pregnant women exposed to tobacco smoke may face complications, including low birth weight and developmental issues in their babies. In this way, smoking infiltrates lives well beyond those who choose to light up. In the UK, smoking remains surprisingly common despite declining rates. According to recent figures, around 13% of adults continue to smoke regularly. While this represents a significant drop compared to previous decades, it still translates to millions of people. Smoking is notably higher among those in lower income brackets, highlighting its complex ties to stress, addiction, and socio-economic disparity. The human cost of smoking is staggering. Over 70,000 deaths in the UK are attributed to smoking-related diseases. These aren't just numbers. They represent parents, siblings, friends, and colleagues lost too soon. Beyond mortality, countless others live with debilitating conditions caused or worsened by smoking, relying on the NHS for treatment. The strain on healthcare resources is immense, diverting attention and funding from other pressing health priorities. In 1985, 2 PSAs were made to show what a, quote, natural-born smoker would look like, someone who has evolved to have natural immunities to the negative effects of smoking. Unfortunately, this natural-born smoker has essentially sacrificed his humanity, turning into some kind of deformed humanoid creature, and we get to see him indulging in his habit. It doesn't even look like he enjoys it. Instead, it just looks like he's doing the only thing he knows how to do. Smoking is his life after all. What's worse is the second natural-born smoker PSA shows that this creature is also a father, and of course, he smokes around the baby as well. Smoking around children is obviously a terrible idea since the smoke affects their lungs too, and a baby, of course, is incredibly vulnerable. By smoking around a baby, you're potentially dooming them to a life of respiratory problems, even if they don't take up smoking themselves. The message of these PSAs is simple. We aren't naturally built to smoke, and we never will be. Unfortunately, smoking PSAs never seem to work, since cigarettes are obviously still selling very well in the UK, despite those disturbing pictures they put on the packs. Vapes are a thing, of course, but they're not healthy either, as they still contain nicotine. The solution to smoking is simple. Don't do it. Don't ever even start. It's not worth it.
The first natural-born smoker will have a larger nose to filter out impurities. Self-cleaning lungs. A highly developed index and middle finger. Smaller ears, because they don't listen. Extra eyelids to protect the eye from irritating smoke. And of course, an inbuilt resistance to heart disease, lung cancer, and thrombosis. Unfortunately, the first natural-born smoker hasn't yet been born. The natural-born smoker will be a responsible parent. To encourage early learning, the child will be exposed to tobacco smoke from birth. Then, when it's older, sent to school to be taught the correct way to inhale cigarette smoke by a group of people called friends. Any child who feels dizzy, sick, or afraid of cancer will be ridiculed until they conform and become a regular smoker.
In my last video on British PSAs, I covered two created by the NSPCC, the UK's leading child protection charity, one that dealt with children being too afraid to tell anyone about the abuse they're going through.
Sally, you're not eating again. What's wrong?
I'm fine. Can I go now?
And another that showed a cartoon boy being beaten by his psychotic father, only to reveal at the end that the boy was not a cartoon at all.
You dirty bastard! Get out! Yes, again, boy, you fucking wrong! Get out of here!
This PSA, released in 1999, is probably their most infamous. The Can't Look PSA is a striking piece of public service advertising that remains etched into the memory of those who saw it. Designed to confront society's apathy toward child abuse, the advertisement carried a poignant and uncomfortable message. The responsibility to protect vulnerable children cannot go ignored, no matter how difficult it may be to face. The PSA features a series of unsettling scenes in which pictures of characters and photographs of people avert their gaze from situations showing child abuse. The imagery is subtle yet potent, an unspoken truth conveyed through the silence of inaction. By showing them covering their eyes, the campaign forces viewers to reflect on their own tendencies to avoid confronting such painful realities. It delivers a jarring call to action, pushing the audience to recognize that turning away enables harm to continue unchecked. What sets Can't Look apart is its stark honesty. Rather than attempting to soften its message, it leans into discomfort to create a sense of urgency. This directness was unusual for public service campaigns at the time and gave the advertisement its lasting power. It wasn't just about raising awareness of child abuse, but also about challenging the public to acknowledge their own potential complicity in remaining silent. The release of the PSA came at a time when the NSPCC was intensifying its efforts to bring the issue of child abuse into public focus. It played a key role in changing the narrative around abuse, highlighting that protecting children is a shared societal responsibility, not one relegated solely to professionals. By targeting the broader public rather than solely relying on authorities, the campaign encouraged collective vigilance and action. Reception to the PSA was significant, with viewers commending its bold approach, though some did complain that the PSA was too disturbing and called for it to be banned. However, its ability to invoke discomfort was precisely its strength. It made people question their own willingness to intervene in situations they might otherwise avoid. This introspection was crucial in motivating individuals to report suspected abuse or support the NSPCC's work.
Shut up! I'm gonna smash your face against that cot if you don't shut your screaming noise!
Come and sit over here.
You're brainless, you're stupid, you're no child of mine!
Mummy, where are you? I don't like being on my own.
Not a word to anyone. This is going to be our little secret.
Sometimes we can't bear to look either, but cruelty to children can be stopped, and with your help, it can be stopped forever. Please support the NSPCC's new Full Stop campaign.
Daddy, don't do this. Daddy, you're hurting me. Stop. Daddy, stop.
Water is often seen as a source of joy and recreation, and of course we can't really live without it, but it poses serious risks to children, particularly in the UK, where drowning remains one of the leading causes of accidental death among young people. Whether it's a backyard pond, a swimming pool, or open water such as rivers and the sea, the potential tragedy is ever present when safety precautions are overlooked. A significant factor for contributing to these incidents is a lack of swimming ability among children. Despite widespread availability of swimming lessons, many young people in the UK never become proficient swimmers. This is especially concerning given the country's abundance of waterways. Poor swimming skills often lead to panic in dangerous situations, making it difficult for children to stay afloat or reach safety. Moreover, the absence of basic water safety knowledge exacerbates the problem, leaving many children unaware of how to react when caught in strong currents or cold water. Ignoring warning signs is another key issue. Many drowning incidents occur in places clearly marked as hazardous, such as areas with strong tides or deep water. Children, and sometimes their caregivers, underestimate these dangers, treating such warnings as unnecessary or irrelevant. This complacency can lead to devastating consequences, particularly during warmer months when families flock to beaches, lakes, and rivers without fully considering the risks. Statistics paint a sobering picture. In recent years, dozens of children in the UK have lost their lives to drowning annually. Many of these deaths are preventable, making them even more heartbreaking. The unpredictability of water, combined with overconfidence, curiosity, and insufficient education, creates a perilous combination that too often ends in tragedy. Now, there is a PSA I'm going to show you in just a bit that does tackle this issue in a way that's designed to scare children straight, but here's another one that encourages parents to get their kids to learn how to swim. At the time, this PSA wasn't meant to be scary, but informative. However, in recent years, it's become disturbing because of who it is delivering this message while in a swimming pool with children, and it's someone I've actually covered on this channel before. Instead of telling you, I'm just going to play this sound. Have you guessed who it is yet?
Those of you who can't swim yet, then if you just wait over in the shallow for me. Kids and water, they love it. Rivers, canals, even the lily pond in the garden. You can't keep them away from it. Water has a fascination for children. And I should know, when I was 3 years old, I fell in the river at our place. Couldn't swim, somehow managed to scrabble my way to the bank, frightened the wits out of my mum and dad. And you can bet they had me taught to swim very soon after that. But some children aren't quite so lucky. And if they can't swim and they go off by themselves to play by the side of some water somewhere, you know only too well what might happen. That's why I had my little girl taught to swim as soon as... Have your children taught to swim. They're never too young to start, and once they get that confidence in the water, they love it. Ask at your local swimming pool, all right? Or if you can swim yourself, why not teach them yourself? It's fun. See?
Lonely Water, commissioned by the Central Office of Information in Britain, is often remembered as one of the most haunting and effective safety campaigns ever produced. Designed to warn children about the dangers of careless behaviour near water, it struck a chilling chord with audiences, delivering its message with a unique combination of suspense, foreboding, and stark realism. Narrated by Donald Pleasance, the PSA used atmospheric visuals and an eerie voiceover to personify water as an ever-present and dangerous force, lurking to claim those who underestimate it. Even decades later, its unsettling imagery and message resonate with those who saw it. The PSA begins with an introduction to the spirit of dark and lonely water, voiced by Pleasance in a sinister, rasping tone. This entity serves as the film's narrator and embodies the hidden threats of open water. The character's shadowy presence hovers in the background, watching and waiting as careless children approach hazardous areas. The message is clear. Water, though silent and unassuming, can turn deadly when treated with recklessness or complacency. This personification of danger was an unusual and effective creative decision that gave the film an almost mythological quality, making the risks feel larger than life and inescapable. The PSA's visuals are stark and deliberately unsettling. Filmed in misty, desolate locations, it portrays rivers, ponds, and lakes as unwelcoming and foreboding places, far removed from the fun and safety of supervised swimming pools or beaches. Children are shown engaging in typical but dangerous behaviors, such as retrieving balls from steep banks or hanging precariously over the deep water from weak tree branches. The settings feel cold and unforgiving, as though nature itself conspires against the children who fail to respect its dangers. This grim portrayal of water as an untamed and indifferent force heightened the PSA's impact, making it far more memorable than a simple factual warning. One of the film's most chilling aspects is its psychological approach. It directly targets the overconfidence and naivety of children, showing how they might dismiss danger until it's too late. The spirit ominously comments on their actions, using phrases like the unwary, the show-off, the fool, to describe those who disregard safety. This tone doesn't merely warn, it challenges the viewer, forcing children to reflect on whether they too might fall into one of these categories. The conclusion of the film offers a faint glimmer of hope, as the narrator's sinister presence dissipates when children are shown acting responsibly or under supervision. This subtle shift underscores the key message: danger is avoidable, but only if children respect the warnings and take precautions. It reinforces the idea that responsibility, awareness, and caution can prevent tragedy, putting the power to stay safe firmly in the hands of the viewer. Lonely Water was part of a broader effort by the public information campaigns in the 1970s to reduce accidental deaths, particularly among children. At the time, drowning was a leading cause of unintentional fatalities in the UK, with many incidents occurring in unsupervised areas such as rivers, ponds, and canals. The PSA aimed not only to inform, but to instill a lasting sense of caution. Its use of fear was calculated. It didn't rely on gratuitous shock, but instead created an atmosphere of dread that left a deeper psychological imprint. Children who watched it were unlikely to forget its message, and many carried the lesson into adulthood. The film's legacy is a testament to its effectiveness. Decades later, people still recall its unsettling imagery and the spine-chilling voice of Donald Pleasance as the spirit. It stands as an example of how a safety message, when crafted with care and creativity, can endure far beyond its initial release. By treating its audience with a mix of seriousness and respect, Lonely Water managed to achieve what many modern campaigns struggle to do: make people genuinely think about their actions and the consequences that could follow. Lonely Water remains an important reminder of how dangerous water can be when underestimated. Its stark visuals, haunting tone, and clear call to action continue to resonate, serving as a timeless warning to anyone tempted to ignore the silent risks of open water. Through its unsettling yet necessary message, it saved countless lives by ensuring that its audience would think twice before putting themselves in harm's way. In 1977, British Transport Films released The Finishing Line, a public information film unlike anything ever seen before. It was created with one goal: to warn children about the deadly dangers of playing on railway tracks. However, rather than using straightforward messaging or conventional storytelling, the filmmakers took an experimental and deeply unsettling approach. The result was a 20-minute short film that has become infamous for its grim, haunting tone and shocking imagery. The film unfolds through the imagination of a young boy who envisions his school hosting a, quote, railway sports day. In his fantasy, the activities revolve around crossing train tracks, playing on live rails, and engaging in competitions where children dodge or directly interact with trains. The imagined event is given an air of normalcy. There are judges, trophies, and cheering spectators. But this ordinary framework only makes the gruesome outcomes more jarring. Children stumble off the tracks bloodied, bodies are carried away on stretchers, and the casualties pile up as the games progress.
Train coming! There's a train! Lift, come there!
The boy's voiceover casually describes these deadly consequences as though they are an expected part of the fun.
Now, you've got 4 teams. Green, blue, yellow and red. Each team has 4 chances to hit that moving train at a distance of about 10 feet. Scoring's simple. 2 points for a smash window, 4 for a direct hit.
It's a surreal and deeply disquieting way to convey the message that railways are no place for games. One of the most striking aspects of The Finishing Line is its willingness to confront its audiences with the full extent of the dangers it warns against. Unlike traditional PSAs of the era, which often relied on suggestion or metaphor, this film showed graphic depictions of injury and death.
Broken window, red, 2 points. Broken window, green, 2 points.
Broken window, 2 points. Injured passenger, 4 points. Total for blue, 6 points.
Broken window, 2 points. Direct hit on driver, 6 points. Total for yellow, 8 points.
Children are seen being struck by trains, limbs are crushed, and the aftermath of their reckless actions is laid bare. These scenes are not gory in the cinematic sense, but their bluntness gives them a terrifying realism. There's no softening of the blow, no comforting reassurance. The message is brutally clear. Playing on or near railway tracks is not just dangerous, it's potentially fatal. The choice to frame the story through the lens of a child's imagination was both innovative and deeply unsettling. By placing viewers inside the mind of a child, the film tapped into the way young people often fail to grasp the gravity of their actions. The surreal tone, combined with the competitive sports day structure, mirrored the casual thrill-seeking attitude that often leads children to trespass on railway property. The film's creators seem to understand that children don't always respond to authority figures issuing stern warnings.
You are old enough to understand that the railway is not the place for any kind of games. I'll say it again. The railway is not the game field.
They needed to see the consequences for themselves, even if those consequences were exaggerated to a nightmarish degree. Despite its powerful message, The Finishing Line was not without controversy. Upon release, it was widely criticized for its graphic nature, with some arguing that it was too traumatic for its target audience. Many parents and teachers felt the film was more likely to frighten children than to educate them. In some regions, the backlash led to its withdrawal from schools, and it was eventually replaced by less distressing safety campaigns. Yet for all its divisiveness, the film's unflinching approach is exactly what made it so memorable. Decades later, those who saw it as children still recall its harrowing imagery and the lasting impact it had on their perception of railway safety. What makes The Finishing Line particularly effective is its refusal to downplay the realities of its subject matter. Railways are inherently dangerous, and the risks associated with trespassing are often unappreciated by children and some adults. The film forces viewers to confront these risks head-on, stripping away any sense of invincibility or casual disregard. By showing the worst possible outcomes, it leaves no room for doubt about the potential consequences of reckless behavior near train tracks. The film's surreal, almost dreamlike quality adds another layer to its impact. The contrast between the playful atmosphere of the sports day and the grim injuries suffered by the participants creates a jarring dissonance. This contrast is further amplified by the judges and spectators, who remain indifferent as the casualties mount. The visual absurdity of this setup underscores the senselessness of treating a deadly environment as a place for fun. It's a bold, artistic choice that ensures the film's message lingers long after it ends. The Finishing Line is a fascinating artifact of the 1970s public safety campaigning. It reflects an era when shock and fear were considered legitimate tools for changing behavior. Unlike modern safety campaigns, which often rely on softer messaging or aspirational storytelling, this film aimed to leave a psychological scar, one that would make children think twice before venturing near a railway line. Whether this approach was ethical or effective remains a topic of debate, but its cultural and historical significance cannot be denied.
So, if any of you think that playing on the railway is a good idea, perhaps he or she would care to stand up.
Staying on the UK railway, we have another PSA that was released 40 years after The Finishing Line, and despite being much shorter, it's arguably far more disturbing. While it was originally released in 2013, this short received wider exposure in 2018 when it was used as part of a campaign that struck a chord with both parents and young people. You versus Train, created to combat a growing trend in trespassing incidents, especially among teenagers. This initiative sought to grab attention using clear, direct language and genuine stories of tragedy and survival. The organisers, Network Rail, British Transport Police, and the wider rail sector recognise that many youngsters view railway tracks as a shortcut, a hangout spot, or simply a space for daring escapes. They also noted a disturbing rise in people filming themselves on the tracks for social media clout. By speaking candidly and avoiding euphemisms, the campaign cut through any illusions that train tracks could be treated like playgrounds. At the heart of You versus Train was the sobering truth that locomotives can't stop on a dime. Even the most attentive engineer has limited power to prevent a collision if someone is on the tracks. Adding to this danger are the high-voltage overhead lines, which are often overlooked as a silent yet potent hazard. The campaign's materials highlighted how contact, even indirect, with this wiring could lead to devastating injuries, including severe burns and amputations. Rather than relying on abstract warnings, the organisers shared real-life accounts from individuals who had narrowly survived their encounters with trains and electricity.
We lost the ball, so went over the small fence to get it. I climbed up onto a train wagon for a better look to find it. I didn't even notice the power lines, but I didn't touch them. I didn't expect electricity to just jump at me through the air. Didn't expect to die today.
These testimonies underscored that the consequences are neither remote nor exaggerated. They are immediate, permanent, and life-altering. One of the most impactful elements of You versus Train was its focus on social media channels. Recognizing that teenagers spent a considerable amount of time online, the creators developed short videos, graphics, and articles that could be easily shared across platforms like Instagram and Twitter. Instead of delivering a sterile lecture, they opted for visually striking content, stark images, urgent text, and confessional videos from survivors who bore visible scars and spoke openly about their experiences. This approach made the campaign feel far more like a conversation than a lecture, appealing to a demographic known for responding more strongly to personal stories than official announcements. Among the personal narratives featured was the story of a young man who ventured onto the tracks for a moment's thrill and ultimately paid a brutal price. His account included graphic details of excruciating burns, extensive hospital stays, and the psychological toil he continues to endure. That single example exemplified the campaign's broader tone, refusing to sugarcoat the harsh reality. By sharing his ordeal, the campaign placed a mirror in front of those who might see train tracks as a place to explore or show off. Viewers were left with a stark choice: face the very real risk of maiming or death, or stay away altogether. Statistics supported the need for such an urgent message. In the lead-up to You versus Train, reports surfaced of increased trespassing incidents, particularly involving young teenagers who dismissed railway property as an unnecessary obstacle or viewed it as a shortcut to get home faster. Some misguided social media stunts also popularized the idea of outrunning a train for the sake of viral fame. Recognizing that traditional warning signs at stations weren't getting through, the creators aimed for a more visceral approach. They hoped that by leaning into the shock factor without resorting to gratuitous gore, they might leave a lasting impression that no caution sign or dry manual could match. Though You versus Train relied on stark imagery, it wasn't purely about scare tactics. The campaign offered clear guidance on how to stay safe around railway tracks, emphasizing the reasons why such areas are fenced off or marked with bold signs. It explained the significance of overhead lines that could carry thousands of volts, reminding people that a train's power system can do severe damage without direct contact. This balanced approach, blunt warnings backed by practical tips, gave audience both the rationale and the reality check they needed. In the months following its launch, You versus Train generated widespread discussion. News outlets picked up on the stirring videos, social media posts ignited debates, and schools incorporated the campaign's materials into safety lessons. While it's difficult to quantify how many potential trespassers were deterred, there's no question that the initiative brought railway safety back to the spotlight. The increased visibility, coupled with direct testimonies, made it a benchmark for how modern public awareness efforts could break through the noise. Traditional leaflets and lifeless campaigns often fade into the background, but You versus Train managed to linger in the minds of its target audience. In the years since its inception, variations of You versus Train have continued to surface, adapting the original message for newer technologies and shifting social media trends, the core principle remains the same: highlight the irreversible dangers, use human stories to illustrate the consequences, and encourage personal responsibility. You versus Train underscores a truth as relevant now as it was in 2018, that no momentary burst of adrenaline is worth risking your life for the future. And no part of this campaign emphasized the dangers of the railway more than Nathan's story. According to the film inspired by Nathan's ordeal, he and his cousin stood on the edge of a bridge above a railway with the discarded length of wire they found on their way home. Instead of leaving the wire where they found it, Nathan threw the wire over the side of the bridge. That single action triggered a terrifying chain of events. The wire arced in mid-air, meeting the high-voltage cables that supply electricity to passing trains. Sparks filled the space under the bridge, followed by a blast that made every nerve scream. Both boys were struck by a surge of energy they had never contemplated. Nathan was lucky enough to survive. His cousin didn't make it. No one could undo that final outcome. This truly shocking and gruesome PSA definitely does a much better job than the finishing line in showing just how deadly the railway can be when not taken seriously.
Growing up, just wanted to fit in. There wasn't much to do where I lived. On that bridge, we weren't out to cause trouble, we was just messing about. We found a metal cable lying around. Our plan was to catch a train. I grabbed onto the cable, my cousin grabbed onto the other cable, and I said, on the count of 3, we'll throw it over. 1, 2, and we threw it. All I knew is that the bottom was electric, nothing about the overhead cables. I always wanted to be a footballer. I went into shock and then into a seizure. The plan for the day was to go to my nan's and then was going to have a game. It was unbearable. The worst pain you can imagine. Burnt skin, burnt clothes, messing about. I weren't afraid of nothing, so I was going to be a bit confused. There's a tightening in all your muscles, ringing in my ears. I'm afraid of pain. As I come around, the scream was getting louder and I realised why it was my cousin. Electric went through his body and out of his stomach.
Someone please help me! Help! Someone!
I was 13 years old when I got electrocuted. 25,000 volts went through my body. At the time I was a confident person, and now as I grow up it's just knocked me back for 6. But that's life, and I still have to live with it. I wouldn't wish this upon anyone.
I had to include a PSA about fire safety in this video, as I did in my last PSA list, as the UK is some of the most harrowing ever made. It's all too easy to imagine a house fire as something that happens to someone else, perhaps a distant news story that ends as quickly as it's mentioned. Yet every year here in the UK, hundreds of people lose their lives and many more are injured due to fires in their own homes. The causes are alarmingly varied: faulty wiring buried behind walls, cooking mishaps that escalate in seconds, and discarded cigarettes smouldering unnoticed. Even something as innocent as a neglected candle can set off a devastating chain of events. Amid these sobering realities is a glaring issue. Too few households have a clear strategy for escaping once flames appear. Most people assume that if they don't smoke or leave the stove unattended, they have little to worry about. But the truth is that house fires can start in surprising ways. Portable heaters sometimes get placed too close to curtains or furniture. Lamps can overheat if the wrong bulbs are used, igniting lampshades or nearby objects. Old extension cords, those that are frayed or overloaded, are another overlooked risk, as they can spark and catch fire with almost no warning. Even phone chargers, if left plugged in around the clock, have been known to overheat in rare cases. Even though the causes of fires vary, what unites so many tragic outcomes is a widespread lack of preparation. People may install a smoke alarm out of a sense of duty or simply because regulations say they should, but they rarely test it. Batteries remain unchanged for years, only to fail when they're most needed. Beyond smoke detectors, an actual plan to exit the property in a hurry is almost non-existent in many homes. Imagine being jolted awake at 3 a.m. by acrid smoke. It's dark, the alarms are blaring, and you have a matter of seconds to act. This terrifying scenario doesn't leave room for confusion or improvisation, yet many families discover too late that they have no idea which door is safest, which windows can open quickly, or whether there's another route to the ground floor if the stairs are blocked. Panic sets in, and people waste precious seconds in a state of indecision. The everyday layout of a home can become a maze in a crisis. Sometimes furniture blocks windows, or possessions pile up in hallways, making it difficult to move swiftly. Children may be in upstairs bedrooms with windows that don't open wide enough for a person to climb out. Elderly residents or those with mobility issues often find themselves especially vulnerable, unable to navigate quickly down flights of stairs or through narrow corridors. Compounding the problem is a tendency to assume that someone else will come to the rescue. In reality, firefighters can only arrive so fast, and even a short delay can mean the difference between escape and disaster. Many people remain in the burning building attempting to salvage valuables, phones, documents, photos, unaware that smoke inhalation possesses a lethal threat far more rapidly than flames do. Toxic fumes released by synthetic materials in modern homes can render a person unconscious in minutes or even seconds if the fire is intense. Fire and rescue services across the UK have tried to hammer home the importance of vigilance, but messages don't always translate into lasting changes in behaviour. When a high-profile fire appears in the headlines, people might test their alarms and feel momentarily anxious about dangling wires or overloaded plugs. Over time, that initial concern fades, and old habits return. A robust fire safety approach should involve more than just annual smoke alarm checks, though that is a start. It also requires families to practice escaping, just as schools hold regular fire drills to ensure children know where to go if a fire breaks out. Parents might review exit routes with their children, making sure each child understands which door to use and where to meet outside. Sometimes installing simple tools like fire escape ladders for upper floors can be a lifesaver, although these are rarely found in typical British homes. Blocking potential hazards, such as making certain that flammable substances are stored safely and ensuring electronics are in good condition, further reduces the risk. As you might have guessed, the purpose of this PSA is to inform people that they should always make an escape plan, or pay a huge price. A single snapshot shows a mother and her 2 children, happily posed together. Suddenly, a piercing beeping noise morphs into the shrill sound of a smoke alarm, and flames consume their smiling faces. In the same instant, the trio materializes inside a raging blaze, trapped and terrified as fire and smoke close in. A desperate man reaches out to save them, but they vanish one by one in a cloud of embers. The fiery scene dissolves into a bedroom where the man startles awake, drenched in sweat. That insistent beeping is now just his alarm clock. Beside it sits the photo from his nightmare, still intact. As he turns off the alarm, he clutches the picture to his chest, mourning his lost family. They perished in a house fire. No plan existed for a quick exit. One terrible night took what mattered most, and all that remains is a reminder that proper preparation might have spared their lives.
When your smoke alarm goes off, make sure you know what to do. Plan your escape now, or you might live to regret it.
In my last PSA video, I covered a short film called Powerful Stuff. Its aim was to teach children of the 80s that breaking into power stations and going near the electrical generators is an absolutely terrible idea, and evidently this was still happening in the 1990s as another PSA was made called Electric Graffiti, And the main thing about this PSA that caught my eye is something that it has in common with Powerful Stuff, something we'll get into later. The film opens with a group of kids spray painting over some graffiti. Another group of kids takes notice and starts chasing them. One of the boys giving chase is named Sean, the main character of the film. It then cuts to a pair of boys walking a dog. Suddenly, the dog breaks free from the chain it was leashed on, and the boys start chasing after him. The dog runs past a fence into a substation, and the boys duck through the fence to continue trying to catch him. One of the boys takes notice of an interesting-looking electrical box that has been broken into. He inspects the box, with his metal chain for the dog clanking around some of the electrical components inside. The boy's friend then calls out to him to let him know he's found the dog. But suddenly the dog runs off again, and the other boy starts chasing him, as the boy at the box turns his attention back to it. He gets closer and reaches for a spray can on top of the box, when suddenly his metal chain clangs in the exact wrong spot. Sean then comes running onto the scene and finds the boy unconscious on the ground. We then cut to an ambulance being driven by a very familiar looking paramedic. As soon as I saw him, I immediately thought I've seen him before, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Once the ambulance arrives, Sean desperately pleads with the paramedic to help the boy.
Come on! Quickly! Come on, he's hurt real bad! 5, 6, 7.
Is he going to be alright, is he?
I said get back! Do you want to end up like this too? Stand clear. Shocking. Now.
After trying to resuscitate the boy, the paramedic asks Sean if he saw what happened, but Sean denies seeing anything.
I need to know how many minutes it's been like this.
Oh, I don't know. How should I know?
Stand clear. Shocking. Now. Did anyone see what happened?
Nah.
The police soon arrive, and Sean flees the scene. Later we see the boy at the hospital, as surgeons go over the horrific burns he suffered from the electrical shock.
We have an unknown child, male, about 14, found at an electricity substation. He was in cardiac arrest, pulseless and not breathing.
Put in another drip, and let's get a 3-lead ECG on.
Reckon the plastic surgery won't be able to do anything with that. 10 to 15% full thickness burns over the front of his thighs mainly, another 15% to his lower abdomen and groin, partial thickness to chest and neck area, and he's got a charred arm and forearm.
Looks like badly burnt cornea, right eye, and similar on left, possibly repairable.
Sean soon arrives at the hospital and finds his way into the operating room. And it's here that we learn why the paramedic from earlier looks so familiar.
Look, whoever you are, will you please go away, Andy?
I'm not allowed in here, come on.
Yes, it's Andy, the main character from Powerful Stuff. Not only is it the same character, but they even got the same actor. In Powerful Stuff, Andy witnessed his best friend Darren die due to the latter ignoring the lecture about the dangers of electricity earlier that day.
No, Darren!
And immediately after, Darren's little brother Tom was killed when he rushed over to Darren's body.
Darren! Darren!
No, Darren!
Perhaps this incident is the reason why Andy became a paramedic in the first place. He wasn't able to help his friends, so he probably thought that by becoming a paramedic, he'd be able to save another child from meeting the same fate. Andy takes Sean out of the room, and the two sit down to talk. It's here that Sean reveals that he did see what happened to the boy.
Did you see what happened? Look, you know more than you're telling me. Come on, Sean. What happened?
He just ran up to the electrical stuff, and there was nothing I could do about it. He was lying where you found him, and that's all I see, all right?
Sean also reveals that he knows the boy, and also gives his name.
Do you know who the injured boy is?
Look, I just need to know...
No, do you know?
Daniel. His name is Daniel.
Meanwhile, the police find Daniel's mother and inform her of what has happened to her son. Back at the emergency centre, Sean asks Andy where Daniel is being taken, with Andy informing him that Daniel is being taken to the hospital. Sean demands to be taken there as well, revealing how he knows Daniel.
Look, take me, I've got to go! Listen, mate, I ain't being totally straight with you. See, Danny, he's my brother. Makes me a close relative, doesn't it?
As this happens, A police detective is questioning Daniel's friend about what happened at the substation.
We're trying to find Stig. You joined off, see?
And then what happened?
I went off to Stig again. It looked like Daniel was going to follow, but he didn't turn up. I went back to find him, and he was. And the ambulance guy was with him.
You didn't call 999 then?
No.
Go ahead. Information on the substation incident.
Are you scared of something, Mark?
Now en route to the Burns unit. And Lee, tell DC Randall the boy's brother was acting very oddly according to hospital staff.
At the hospital, Sean finds his mother waiting to hear about Daniel's condition. Sean tells her about what happened before the detective from earlier arrives.
What happened, Sean? He just ran up to the substation. He must have touched something. There was a big explosion and... Look, Mum, I called 999 straight away.
I need to talk to Sean about the incident that happened at the substation today.
For heaven's sake, can't you people ever leave him alone?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Jordan, but we have reason to believe that Danny's injuries may not have been caused accidentally.
Hinting that he hasn't been telling the whole truth about what happened at the substation. It's then that he reveals what really happened.
What happened at the substation, Sean? What happened today?
Oh, yeah! With ease, we'll have him, yeah?
Sean was the one who caused the explosion that gravely injured his brother.
It was an accident, Mum. Sorry.
Surgeons then arrived to give Sean and Daniel's mother some tragic news.
I have to tell you that your son has died. He died because the extent of his burns were so great that his body simply couldn't cope. He died of heart failure. We did everything we possibly could. I'm sorry.
And believe it or not, that's how the PSA ends. It fades to black as we see Sean racked with guilt, while the sound of his mother's tears and chilling music plays in the background. Sean and his friends completely ignored the dangers of a substation, and Sean himself is directly responsible for what happened to Daniel, accidental or not. Powerful stuff and electric graffiti really are some of the best the UK has to offer, in terms of PSAs that actually do what they're supposed to, educate, while adding a shock factor to get the point across about the dangers of electricity. It was very surprising to see Andy appear in both. Again, it seems that losing his two friends was what inspired him to become a paramedic. It's a real shame that even though I've seen him in 2 PSAs, I have no idea who plays him, as cast lists for these PSAs don't exist anywhere, so I'll likely never know who played this memorable character. But whether I find out who appeared in these PSAs or not, I'll always remember them for how effective they were at conveying their point. Stay away from electricity substations. The consequences can be devastating. And that's the end of the video, folks. I hope you've enjoyed the dive into these dark and disturbing PSAs from my homeland. I'm interested in covering PSAs from other countries, so if that's something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like this video, leave a comment and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.